So you get that text from someone, you look down, and you're like, oh, I don't want to answer that right now, or I don't know how to answer that right now. I don't want to deliver bad news. I don't want to disappoint this person. I'll answer it later. I'll answer it in like 5 minutes. An hour goes by, you see it again, you're like, oh, still not ready to answer that. Before you know it, 3 days have gone by and you've not responded back to that text. You've not followed through. And guess what it's done to you? It's pulled your peace because you know it's on the back of your mind. You know you haven't responded to them and you know you still need to. And now you've gone and made it super awkward because now you've waited 3 days and the same outcome is going to be the one that you would have done if you'd just sent that text right away at the start. Why do we do that? Why are we ghosting people? There's a reason behind it. There's a psychological barrier. And today we're going to talk about how to overcome that, why it's happening, and then it's going to free your life up. It's going to give you your identity back, because what does that identity tell you about yourself when you don't respond to someone? I'm not someone that can respond. And you have all this guilt and anxiety and wasted time and energy, and it really impacts your creative space. Whether you know it or not, it's stopping you from living your life fully and expressing yourself fully. And so that's why it's so important. It's such a little thing, and it's just a tip of an iceberg. There's a lot more behind that, and it's showing up in other places, as we always talk about. So today we're gonna hone in on that, and you're gonna take some nuggets away that will empower you to text right back, no fear, be in control, in charge, and love your life by doing something so simple, by just responding quickly to people and not being afraid. So yeah, and the perfect person to talk about this is, we were talking about this earlier. Sean has never had this issue. He will respond back to you immediately. He'll respond back to you before you've even sent the text. That's how fast he'll respond, which is ridiculous, but that's what it feels like sometimes. He is on it. This is something I've struggled with many times in the past, and I've learned this is no way to live. And so I've leveled up in this area, and it's almost embarrassing to say because it's something so ridiculous, so small. Why is it an issue? But it bothered me, and I know a lot of people suffer from this. So many memes out there, right? But yeah, so we're going to jump into today. Sean's perfect person to talk to. I'll give some of my anecdotes, my experiences, how I've overcome it, what I've been able to do, and what it's done for me. So yeah, man, take us away, Sean.
Beautiful, man. And make sure you stay around to the end, because I've actually got an actionable strategy too that I've implemented here recently that has just been a game changer. So
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that.
make sure you stay around to the end for that. So I'll share that. Yeah, man. From my perspective, it's an epidemic almost, right? As far as as far as ghosting people in business and even personal life as well. And so, man, I'm an imperfect human being as well, and I think there's a rule, what I always try to follow is a 24 to 48 hour rule. And so one of the things that I've had to really reflect on recently on ghosting that I struggled in was, to a certain degree, was family, Ewan.
Mm,
And for instance,
mm.
whether it be my dad or whether it be not necessarily my mom, but my dad. And when I pull back the layers on why I would prolong that 24 to 48 hours, first off, what would you consider ghosting? Would you consider ghosting somebody never responding or never following up, or a week later, 2 weeks later, or just never responding or communicating?
Maybe a bit of both. It's kind of both. Like if you haven't responded back in 3 days, 2 days, and it's probably a pretty straightforward response, that would be considered kind of like, well, now it's awkward. And yet never texting back. That's something I haven't really. I will almost always respond back. I mean, there's very few people I haven't ever responded back to, but yeah, that would be. I think they're both forms of ghosting, and I think there's different levels there. Because there are people out there who they won't respond back at all, and they are suffering from that. But it's more of the same, to be honest. There's a reason why we're either not responding back or we're waiting long, like we're taking time.
So throwing some humor into this, my chemistry between me and my dad, right? And we love each other. We go to war with each other. And so one of my dad's been retired. He's been retired for a few years. And so when I was building the businesses, that takes a lot of your time, energy, and effort. And so one of the things that I had neglected, unfortunately, was, and that I've been working on the last couple of years, is that relationship with my dad. And so early and often he would text message me because he's retired, I'm working, and I think he forgot that I was actually working in peak and building phase. And so he would text me like simple things, hey, good morning, make it a good Friday with a stronghold, or text me his breakfast. And then be like, oh, that's cool. Like in my mind, I'm like, man, that's great, Dad. I'm like, and then I'd go back to work, just making sure that there wasn't an emergency or something to get him. There wasn't something going on, I want to make sure my dad's safe, and because he lives by himself. But so over time, when we're doing this episode today, I'm like, is that ghosting? Because like I would follow up with him 3 or 4 days later, and I think there's a certain, and the reason I'm bringing all this up is because I think there's a fine line between like the scenario, the
Mm.
situation, in
How
what.
did you feel when you didn't respond back to him? What was your? Did you feel like I should, but I'm not, or was it more like you received it like, oh great, love that he sent that, and just didn't respond back, and it was all good? Like what did you take?
Yeah, exactly what you just said. As far as, oh, hey, like I'm thinking in my mind is like he just said, hey, have a good Friday. I don't know. I didn't know I needed to respond to him.
So you
You see,
didn't
I
feel
think
bad at all by not responding. You were just cool with it.
exactly because
Yeah,
he was telling me to have a good Friday, so I didn't feel obligated to send a text message back, as to him saying, hey, by the way, happy Friday as well.
yeah.
And so I didn't feel obligated to say that. But I feel like for today's episode, in my mind, here recently and correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel like I should have text message back on something like
To me,
that?
if someone texted me like that, I would text back, because to not text back, it would be mortifying to me. But
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're talking about today. To me, what you're doing, someone texts you and says, great,
Happy
have a great
Friday.
Friday. Where is the rule that you should text back?
Right.
They and so
No question.
there's the issue for people, right? Like, what is the rules and laws of the communication? And so if and we'll probably get to that at the end, but it's well, if there's rules and laws, and if they're known what they are up front, then the anxiety, the fear or disappointment or whatever it is, uh, will completely go away. Because let's say we both agree, hey, if I send you a text on Fridays, and I'm not looking for a response back, I just want you to know I have a great day, and you're like,
Right.
okay, cool. And or if I say, hey, PS, if you send me a text and I don't respond, it's not because I'm not wanting to talk to you. It's that I'm dialed in over here, but just know I love you always, right? So that would just be an agreement, but then all the pressure would be off. But we don't have that conversation, right?
Nope.
And so where's the rule? And so there's really, why would it be wrong that you, or bad that you didn't respond back? It's a unspoken. It's not a real rule, but
Yeah.
we're
But
told that it should be.
well, in full context, so I would have that conversation, and this is so that would happen. And he would bring it up. Oh, my son never texts me back. Jokingly
Mm-mm.
say that,
Mm.
and be like, Dad, let me share some context with you. He's like, you remember when you were in your mid-30s? He goes, yeah, I remember this was about 20, 30 years ago. I was like, yeah, what were you doing in that time? He's like, well, I was working a lot. I was like, okay, so what do you think I'm doing? I'm building. He's like, well, he's like, I get it. He's like, I just want to let you know that I love you. I was like, well, that's it. Like, I didn't feel, if you want me to respond, I can, but typically if it's something with safety, or what's the dialogue here? Like, like you said, what's the expectations?
Yeah.
What is the rules on responding? So now he knows. That's the beautiful thing about it. We've had this conversation. We've had this communication. He goes, oh, just because I send you something doesn't mean my son's going to respond, but if he needs something or has a question,
Yeah.
and then I'll make sure
Different
that I respond
context.
in that context.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, Ewan, is here recently I had an individual that, so the flip side of this is I had an individual that was going to be joining the Level Up and Live community product. So I reached out, make sure he had all the information, the details, got all the questions and concerns answered, and no response on the text message. And he expressed interest before then that's something he would be interested in joining. Cool. Hey, here's a follow-up text, and I will follow up. So here's a follow-up text. Didn't hear, so I called, and then I called him the next morning, and in that morning he kind of was surprised, like, oh, hey, it's I was like, hey man, it's Sean, you got a few minutes? He goes, yeah, I got a few minutes. He's like, whoa, no, I'm actually headed out right now. Can I text you back? Can I text you back? I was
Mm.
like, okay, no problem, man. Want to respect your time. Text me back. So that to me is a rule. When you tell somebody that you're going to do it and then don't do it, you're out of line with your integrity, because we
Mm.
are men of our word. So you say you're going to do something, do it. Now, I have an actionable strategy. Make sure you're midway through this episode, you stay through to the end, because a lot of times what we do, Ewan, and I know this from just with dealing with team members, spouses, people that don't have that skill set, call it what you want, to send that text message or let that person know because they don't want to hurt them or, you know, whether they're overwhelmed. And we'll get in that here in a second because I want to pick your brain on that.
Yeah.
So there is a strategy behind that that removes the emotions and the feelings that I use myself. But
That's
for
the nugget
me,
everyone's going to want to have
yeah,
right there. I'm
key
going to write that
ingredient.
one down.
So my question is to you, Ewan, like we talked about this behind the episode a couple of days ago. When that happens, because that happens all the time, it's not just with this individual, but that happens, whether it's an email or business deal or business opportunity. To me, that creates so much. There's so much animosity, because if that individual reaches out to me in the future and wants help with something or has a question for something, that's the first thing. Well, you ghosted me.
Yeah.
So you've almost burnt that bridge
Yeah.
when you ghost people. So I'm curious on why do you think that we do that? Whether you're a business owner, sales professional, or just an individual leveling up, why do you think that we do that to ourselves and to the other individual?
Because when you have a certain level of respect for someone, or you don't want to lose approval or friendship or bond, but by telling no to someone, in our culture society, if we tell someone no, well, now there's a separation. We're not on the same page anymore. We're not as close as we thought, and so all these connotations go with telling someone no or rejecting them. It's awkward. Like, you don't want that awkward silence, and you don't want to be asked, well, why not? Right. So we avoid, right? What ends up happening, all that's going on in our heads in a split second. So we just avoid, put it off. We don't stare it down. We don't want to look. I'll just sweep that under the rug, which is the worst thing to do, right? Our minds is trying to protect ourselves by doing that because it senses danger, and it's just, I'm going to put that away for now and go do something else, and we put it on hold. But it doesn't go away, right? It stacks up on top of each other, and we know we're going to have to face it at some point, uh, which means it's going to be carried with us, right? It's like this baggage, this weight, right? And it impacts your identity. And
Yeah.
so I think you've done that so many times, becomes habitual. Now your identity that's your go-to move. It worked last time, right? I didn't have to say no and go through that awkward conversation, so I'll just sweep it under the rug for now, and I'll deal with it at some other point. But the impact is, now look how you now perceive that person, and that person probably knows as well, right? So again, it impacts their identity. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it also depends on the time of day. Like, let's say, even this is a real deal. Decision fatigue. Let's say you've been making decisions all day long, and you've been working hard or hustling, and you've been head down in the zone, and then someone asks you something, a request. It's going to require more energy of you to accept. It might take brain power to process. Can I fit that thing in? Is it something I want to do? Can I afford it? And so it's like, I've got nothing left in the tank. I'm going to put that off. Same thing, same avoidant behavior. I'm going to put that off. I'll deal with it later. It's procrastination, right? And so it's all psychological. It's all about how we, and none of it, here's the wild part, none of it's true. None of it's true. These are conversations we're having in our heads that are just generated from our past experiences. And none of it's real. You could just say, nope,
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
But we don't, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to how you could do that and feel okay. And there's a number of different techniques, and different things. I've got a couple myself that have really worked for me, and I can't wait to hear yours, because I want to add that to my deal. But yeah, I would say that's where a lot of that comes from. It's an avoidant behavior. That's why people do it. They're trying to protect themselves from animosity, aggression, disappointment, all those things. You never know which one, but it's something along those lines.
Hmm. Yeah, and it really, I don't like it for people because, like, when I think of this individual and I think of other people in the past that have done this and ghosted, I think about my my wife that was uh, pretty much deeply hurt. And honestly, in 30 plus years, I've never heard of a scenario like this, man. And sometimes, here's full transparency, we are strong personalities. We own it. Like, that's just, we call ourselves the power couple. Like, sometimes, like, what you see is what you get. Like, we're raw and real. We wear it on our shoulders, and
Yep.
you either love us or there might be the opposite effect of that. And he's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. But I love it so much because when you know who you are, you're authentic. You can do those things, and you can say no with authority, and just builds respect. And you've always said that. You're like, man, I respect somebody that can say no.
Yeah.
And so with this individual, she was so connected. Kendra was so connected with this individual, man. They had deep conversations, Ewan, like me and you have had, just heart to heart, just sharing their heart and soul. And for several years, and this individual was older than Kendra. So Kendra almost looked up to her like a mentor. They would talk to each other going to
Mm.
school in the mornings and in the afternoon times. And sometimes when, me and Kendra, we'd have there'd be an argument or something like that. She'd be able to reach out to him because, it's always important to have that mentor. Well, when that comes down to it, and you have somebody close, it'd be